Have you ever wondered why certain wounds cut deeper than others? Why it's not the world that breaks you, but the ones who share your name, your blood, your childhood memories. The kind of pain that doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people you once believed would never hurt you. And when they did, something inside you didn't just crack. It quietly died. You started smiling less, trusting less, hoping less. Infinite less control. You learned how to exist, not how to live. But somewhere in the unseen, God was watching the years of your silent suffering, and He made a promise to your heart. I will restore what they tried to destroy. You see, pain within a family is unlike any other pain. It carries betrayal wrapped in familiarity. It's the mother's harsh words, the father's absence, the siblings' jealousy, the relatives' indifference. It all weaves into a kind of sorrow that no one else can understand. You tell yourself to move on, but how do you move on when the roots of your pain are buried in the soil that raised you? You may have outgrown the house, but not the hurt. Yet, what you don't see is that while you were crying in secret, heaven was planting something new in that same soil, a garden of healing where ashes used to be. There's a divine mystery in how God heals the heart. He doesn't always erase the memory, He redeems it. He takes what broke you and turns it into the very thing that strengthens you. He allows the years of pain to prepare the ground for restoration, because the heart that has been betrayed by family often becomes the heart most equipped to carry compassion, wisdom, and grace. You begin to see the world differently. You begin to see yourself differently. What once made you feel unworthy now becomes proof that you survived what should have destroyed you. God doesn't rush the process. Restoration is not a quick repair. It's a resurrection. It's a patient undoing of every lie you were told about your worth. It's Him whispering into the wounds they left. You were never less than enough. Every tear you cried was counted. Every night you spent questioning your value was heard, and now, in this season, the same God who saw your heartbreak is breathing life into the places that have been numb for years. You may not feel it yet, but something sacred is shifting within you. The same hands that allowed the storm are now rebuilding what it tried to wash away. Maybe your family took your peace. Maybe they mocked your dreams. Maybe they made you feel like love was something you had to earn. But God is rewriting your story. He's taking the shame they projected onto you and turning it into confidence. He's taking the rejection you felt and using it to teach you discernment. The same pain that once made you feel unlovable will become the reason you love more purely. The same people who made you doubt your voice will one day be silenced by the strength of your healed heart. Restoration doesn't mean going back to who you were before the hurt. It means becoming someone wiser, stronger, softer, someone who has seen the darkness and still chooses to believe in light. God is not restoring what was lost. He is restoring you. The you that laughed without fear, the you that trusted freely, the you that believed in goodness even when no one else did. That version of you was never gone. It was only buried under years of pain, and now God is calling it back. There will come a day when you look back and realize that the pain your family caused was the very thing that pushed you toward divine love, the kind that no human hand can give or take away. You'll understand that the rejection you endured was not a curse, but a redirection. God was never punishing you. He was preparing you to understand His kind of love, unconditional, unbreakable, eternal. And when He restores, He doesn't give back pieces. He gives you back more than you lost, more joy, more peace, more self-worth. You are not the product of their mistakes. You are the proof of God's mercy. You may have inherited their pain, but you're about to pass down strength. The same bloodline that wounded you will one day be blessed through your healing. Because God doesn't waste suffering. He transforms it. The years that pain stole from you are not gone. They are being redeemed, reshaped, and returned as wisdom, purpose, and peace. The family that broke your heart may never apologize, but heaven already has. And the voice that speaks louder than their silence is whispering now, I am making all things new. Family pain cuts the deepest. It's not just a saying. It's a truth carved into the soul of every person who has ever been hurt by those they once called home. Pain from the outside world is easier to shake off because you expect it from strangers. You can dismiss their words, distance yourself from their actions, and protect your peace. But when the wound comes from inside your own circle, when the hands that were supposed to protect you are the ones that pushed you down, it leaves a scar that time alone cannot erase. The betrayal of family strikes at the very foundation of your identity, because family is meant to represent love, safety, and belonging. And when that foundation cracks, your sense of self trembles with it. It begins subtly, often long before you even realize you've been wounded. It might be a parent whose approval you could never earn, no matter how hard you tried. A sibling whose jealousy turned into cruelty. A relative whose gossip shredded your reputation. A home where love was conditional, where silence was used as punishment, and where your worth was measured by how much you obeyed, rather than how deeply you felt. Family pain is complex because it mixes love with disappointment, loyalty with betrayal. You don't just lose a relationship, you lose your innocence, your trust, and sometimes even your belief in goodness itself. What makes family pain so haunting is that it's tied to your earliest memories. The people who caused it are the same ones who taught you what love was supposed to look like. So when they hurt you, it confuses your understanding of love altogether. You start believing that love and pain must coexist. You think you have to tolerate mistreatment to keep the peace. You silence yourself to avoid being called ungrateful or disrespectful, and over time you begin to accept dysfunction as normal. But deep inside, your spirit knows this is not what love was meant to be. When the betrayal finally reveals itself in full, it shakes everything. It makes you question if family truly means what it should. You wonder how people who share your blood can also be the ones who tear you apart. There's a special kind of ache in realizing that the ones you would have died for wouldn't even stand for you. You might even feel guilty for feeling hurt, because society tells you that family is sacred, that you must always forgive and forget. But healing doesn't come from denial. It begins when you allow yourself to acknowledge that what they did was not love. It was control, fear, or selfishness disguised as care. And yet, even with that realization, you find yourself missing them. Because family pain is paradoxical. You can hate what they did and still love who they are. You can crave their approval even after they've rejected you. That inner conflict becomes its own kind of torment. You replay conversations in your head, imagining how things could have been different if they had just chosen to see you, to value you, to understand you. But as years pass, you realize that closure doesn't come from them. It comes from God, the only one who truly understands the depths of that pain and the purpose hidden within it. God knows how deeply those wounds run. He knows that being hurt by a stranger wounds your pride, but being hurt by family wounds your soul. Yet he also knows how to turn that pain into wisdom. Because the person who learns to forgive without being asked, who learns to love without conditions, and who learns to walk away without bitterness, becomes someone unbreakable. Family pain can make you empathetic in ways comfort never could. It teaches you to read silence, to see pain behind smiles, to offer compassion to those who are still carrying what you've already survived. In truth, family pain breaks you open so that God can rebuild you differently. It strips away false love so you can recognize divine love. It removes your dependence on people so you can lean on God fully. Sometimes the family that broke your heart was the tool heaven used to draw you closer to its healing. You may not see it while you're still bleeding, but one day you'll understand that the wound wasn't meant to define you. It was meant to deepen you. Just as your word fosters more, it meant to lead you. The heart that has endured betrayal from its own blood learns a sacred kind of strength. You become more discerning about who deserves access to your peace. You stop begging for love that cost you your self-respect. And you begin to understand that forgiveness doesn't mean inviting people back into your life. It means freeing yourself from their control. The pain that once crippled you begins to shape you into someone more aware, more grounded, more whole. So yes, family pain cuts the deepest, but it also awakens the deepest healing. It shatters illusions so that you can see love in its purest form, not the flawed, conditional version humans offer, but the perfect, unconditional love that only God can give. The same wound that once made you question your worth will one day remind you of your divine resilience, and though it may have come from your family, it will not define your family. You are not their cruelty. You are the strength that rose from it. You are living proof that God can restore what others tried to destroy. Even when those others carry your last name, God sees silent suffering. He sees the tears that never fall, the words you never speak, and the moments you pretend to be fine when your heart is barely holding together. There's a kind of pain that hides behind laughter, a kind that people don't notice because you've learned how to disguise it well. You've been strong for so long that others assume you're unshakable, but only God knows what it costs you to hold yourself together when no one is watching. He hears the thoughts you silence before they escape your lips, the ones that whisper, "Why did they treat me this way, and do they even know what they've done?" He hears the prayers you never say aloud, the ones too broken to form into sentences. It's in those hidden moments of agony that His presence becomes the closest. God is not absent in your silence. He is there, listening. He doesn't need you to explain your pain for Him to understand it. He has seen every scene that led you here, every argument that left you feeling worthless, every cold shoulder that made you question your place, every betrayal that cut deeper than a knife while you were sitting in that room, wondering why love had to hurt so much. He was there, watching, not because He enjoys your suffering, but because He was preparing to turn that pain into power. When you endure silent suffering, you start to believe no one truly understands. You convince yourself that your pain is invisible, that people see your smile but not the trembling behind it, but heaven sees. Heaven keeps record of everything you've endured quietly. The world might overlook you, but God doesn't. Every tear you've swallowed, every night you've spent awake trying to make sense of unfairness, every time you've chosen peace instead of retaliation, none of it has gone unnoticed. He has been storing those tears as evidence of your endurance, as seeds for the harvest that's coming. People may misjudge your silence, thinking it means weakness or indifference. But silence, in God's eyes, often means strength. It means you trusted Him enough to let Him fight battles that your words couldn't win. It means you chose to keep your dignity instead of lowering yourself to bitterness. You may have wanted to shout your truth, to defend your heart, to expose what was done to you. But you didn't. You let God handle it. And that restraint is the language of faith. When you stay silent, heaven speaks louder on your behalf. Sometimes it feels like your silence costs you everything: relationships, peace, reputation. You watch others move on without remorse, while you're left with unanswered questions and a heart full of ache. But what you don't see is that God is working behind the silence. He's shifting hearts, rearranging circumstances, and preparing a table for you in the presence of those who doubted your strength. He's writing justice into the very chapters they thought they'd closed. The delay is not denial, it's divine timing. In the quiet seasons, God molds your character. When you're alone with your pain, He teaches you how to stand without applause, how to pray without proof, how to forgive without closure. That's sacred training, because it transforms you from someone who reacts to someone who reflects. He refines your faith in the fire of stillness, showing you that peace isn't found in explanations, but in trust. And while your family may never admit what they did, while the people who hurt you may never ask for forgiveness, God has already acknowledged it. He saw the moment your heart broke and declared that it wouldn't end there. You see, God is the witness no one can silence. He's the unseen judge who remembers what others forget. While they move on, He moves within. While they ignore, He restores. While they deny, He delivers. You don't need to prove your pain to anyone, because He already saw the truth when it happened. And that truth is enough for Him to redeem every second of your silent suffering. In other words, God is the man who will not. So don't think your silence has gone unnoticed. Heaven is building something from it. Every time you held back tears and chose peace, you added to the foundation of your restoration. Every time you resisted bitterness, you proved your faith was real. God has been keeping track, and there will come a day when He reveals what your silence was protecting, the beauty that was growing in the dark. The same silence that once felt like your weakness will become the sound of your victory. The same God who saw you weep in secret will honor you in the open, because nothing is hidden from Him, not the betrayal, not the pain, and not the quiet strength it took to survive it. Restoration is a divine process, not an instant repair. God does not work with haste, because what He builds is meant to last. When you ask Him to heal the damage that years of family pain have caused, He doesn't simply stitch the wound closed. He starts by reaching deep into the roots of your hurt, the hidden places where bitterness, fear, and self-doubt have quietly grown. He removes what was never meant to take root and replaces it with His truth. It's a process of unlearning everything that pain taught you about yourself and relearning who you were always meant to be. Restoration is not about returning to the person you were before the heartbreak. It's about becoming the person you couldn't have become without it. You see, when something valuable is broken, a quick fix never honors its worth. If a masterpiece is damaged, you don't hand it to an amateur with glue. You trust it to the hands of a master restorer who understands its original beauty. That's what God is doing with your heart. He's not patching it up for appearances. He's restoring it to its divine design. He's cleansing the wounds that time has infected with resentment, and He's restoring the light that disappointment tried to extinguish. You might not understand why it's taking so long, but that delay is mercy. Because if He gave you restoration before you were ready, you'd lose it again. God's process protects you from repeating the pain. Restoration takes time because it requires transformation. God has to change how you see yourself before He can change how you see your past. He teaches you to stop defining yourself by who hurt you and start defining yourself by who He is in you. Each stage of His process serves a purpose. The silence trains your patience. The loneliness strengthens your faith, and the waiting deepens your understanding of love. He allows you to walk through seasons where nothing makes sense, so that when healing finally comes, you'll recognize it as holy, not coincidental. And yes, it's painful. There will be days when you'll feel like you're moving backward, when old memories resurface and wounds you thought were healed start to ache again. That's not regression, it's revelation. God is showing you what still needs His touch. He's pulling the poison out of your past, so that when He restores you, no trace of bitterness remains. Think of it like refining gold. The fire doesn't destroy the metal, it burns away the impurity. Likewise, divine restoration purifies your heart until only what's true remains: your worth, your faith, your resilience. Many people want restoration without process. They want peace without surrender, healing without confrontation, and joy without discipline. But God's restoration doesn't work that way. He doesn't skip steps, because every step carries a lesson. He allows you to feel your pain so that empathy can take root. He lets you face your memories so that forgiveness can grow. He even allows you to walk alone for a while so that you can learn the sound of His voice above all others. By the time He's done, you're not just healed, you're wiser, calmer, and unshakably grounded in your faith. What's beautiful about God's process is that it restores not only what was broken, but also what was forgotten. Somewhere in your journey of pain, you lost pieces of yourself, your laughter, your curiosity, your confidence, your joy, and one by one, He's returning them. Sometimes it happens subtly. You laugh again without forcing it. You trust someone and it feels natural. You wake up and realize that the weight in your chest is lighter. That's restoration in progress. It's not dramatic or loud. It's gentle, sacred, and slow, like dawn breaking after a long night. God's restoration doesn't just repair your emotions, it rewrites your story. The same chapters that once brought shame will become testimonies of strength. The same family history that caused your tears will one day reveal His glory. Because when God restores, He multiplies. He doesn't give back what you lost, He gives you back more. Peace that surpasses understanding, wisdom that protects you from future harm, and love that no one can take away again. So if you feel like nothing is happening, remember, restoration is happening beneath the surface. Just as a seed breaks before it blooms, your heart must break before it blossoms. What looks like delay is preparation. What feels like silence is sacred reconstruction. God is not ignoring your pain. He's using it as the raw material for your renewal. Every slow step, every quiet day, every tear that dries unseen. It's all part of His perfect plan to restore what years of family pain tried to take from your heart. And when His work is complete, you won't just recognize yourself again, you'll recognize His love in every piece that was put back together. Pain becomes preparation for purpose. It doesn't feel like that when you're living through it, when you're standing in the ruins of a family that should have loved you but instead taught you fear, rejection, and self-doubt. In those moments it feels like your life has been stripped of meaning. You ask God, "Why did you allow this? Why me?" And heaven seems silent, but what you don't see then is what only time and divine wisdom reveal later. That pain in the hands of God is never wasted. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every tear you've cried in secret becomes a tool that shapes you for the purpose you were born to fulfill. When family pain pierces your heart, it's not just an emotional wound, it's a spiritual awakening. You start to see people differently. You start to understand the hidden motives behind love, loyalty, and silence. You become more discerning, more cautious, but also more compassionate. God allows certain people to hurt you, not to destroy your faith in love, but to purify your understanding of it. He shows you the difference between affection that manipulates and love that liberates. Through betrayal, you learn to recognize authenticity. Through rejection, you learn the value of your presence. Through abandonment, you discover that divine companionship was there all along. Pain prepares you by stripping away illusions. When you lose the approval of those you once idolized, you begin to realize that no human validation can sustain your worth. You learn that peace isn't found in being accepted, it's found in being aligned with truth. The version of yourself that constantly sought to please others begins to die, and a stronger version begins to rise. God uses pain as a refining fire, burning away the false identities you built to survive. The moment you stop trying to earn love, you start becoming love. The moment you stop chasing validation, you start attracting purpose. Family pain has a strange way of forcing you into isolation, but that isolation becomes holy ground. It's in that solitude that God begins to teach you. You start hearing His voice clearer, not because He wasn't speaking before, but because the noise of others had finally faded. He begins to rebuild your perspective, showing you that every person who left you created space for something sacred, peace, wisdom, and divine clarity. He teaches you to rely on His approval instead of theirs, to seek His comfort instead of their attention, and slowly you begin to see that what was meant to break you has actually been training you. Think of Joseph in the pit, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, forgotten by the very family he trusted. Yet every betrayal positioned him for his destiny. The same family that despised him pushed him into the path that would make him a leader. That's what God does with pain. He turns it into positioning. Every rejection is a redirection. Every closed door is a divine detour. The people who pushed you away didn't realize they were pushing you toward your purpose. When God prepares you through pain, He also deepens your empathy. You begin to recognize wounded hearts in others because you've been there. You see behind people's anger, their silence, their distance, and you understand it's not always malice, it's hurt. You stop taking everything personally and start seeing with spiritual eyes. The same pain that once made you bitter now makes you understanding. You start to speak gently to those who are broken because you know what it's like to be shattered and misunderstood. That's how God uses your suffering. He turns it into a bridge of compassion that connects you to others. There's also a divine confidence that grows out of pain. Once you've survived being broken by the people who were supposed to protect you, you realize there's not much left in this world that can destroy you. You stop fearing loss because you've already lost what you thought you couldn't live without, and you're still standing. That's strength born of grace. That's faith forged in fire. The person who comes out of family pain is no longer fragile. They're fortified. They walk differently. They love differently. They pray differently. Their peace is no longer negotiable. In time, you come to see the wisdom in the suffering. You begin to realize that what the enemy meant for evil, God repurposed for good. You wouldn't have discovered your worth if they hadn't tried to devalue you. You wouldn't have developed resilience if they hadn't tested your limits. You wouldn't have known the depth of divine love if human love hadn't failed you. Pain is the classroom where purpose is taught, and though it's a hard lesson, it's a holy one. So, the next time you look back at the wounds your family caused, see them not as evidence of your destruction, but as evidence of your preparation. You were never being punished. You were being trained. God was preparing your heart for a higher calling, one that requires the depth only suffering can produce. Your pain didn't disqualify you. It qualified you. It refined you into the kind of person who can carry light into dark places, love without fear, and forgive without forgetting who you are. That's the power of divine preparation, turning the worst chapters of your life into the foundation of your destiny. God redeems what others destroyed. That's the miracle of divine justice. It doesn't simply replace what was taken, it transforms it into something greater. What your family tried to crush in you, your peace, your self-worth, your faith in love, God is now rebuilding in a way that no human hand can touch again. He doesn't just return what was lost, He makes it stronger, purer, and untouchable. Every word that broke your spirit, every betrayal that stole your trust, every moment that made you feel invisible, all of it is being rewritten by a God who specializes in resurrection. When people wound you, they think they've diminished you. They think that by shaming you, ignoring you, or manipulating you, they've permanently altered who you are. But they underestimate the power of divine restoration. God does not allow destruction without designing a recovery plan that elevates you beyond what existed before. What your family meant for harm becomes the very soil from which your renewal grows. The heartbreak they caused becomes the doorway through which God introduces a stronger, freer version of you. It often begins quietly. While you're still grieving, still questioning, still replaying everything in your head, God starts working in the unseen. He begins healing you in ways you don't even recognize. One morning you wake up and realize you didn't cry yourself to sleep the night before. One day you find yourself laughing, not because everything's fixed, but because your heart is remembering joy. That's redemption in progress, small, sacred victories that whisper, "I'm making all things new." Redemption doesn't mean God erases the past. It means He redeems its purpose. He takes the words that wounded you and turns them into wisdom. He takes the rejection you suffered and turns it into redirection. Every loss becomes a lesson. Every betrayal becomes a breakthrough. The same moments that broke your spirit are now being used to build your character. You learn that peace doesn't come from people doing right by you. It comes from trusting that God will make wrongs right in His time. Your family may never say they're sorry. They may never admit what they did or how deeply it affected you. But God doesn't need their confession to begin your restoration. His justice doesn't depend on human apologies. It flows from His nature. He saw the damage, He measured the pain, and He set in motion a plan that ensures your recovery will be greater than your loss. That's the divine equation. Every ounce of pain is multiplied into purpose. Every tear you shed becomes a seed that produces something sacred: wisdom, empathy, and strength. Sometimes redemption looks like distance. God removes you from environments that continue to wound you so He can heal you in peace. He might close doors that once felt like home, not to punish you, but to protect your growth. And though you may feel lonely for a while, that loneliness is not emptiness. It's space for transformation. God uses separation to restore your identity. You start realizing that your worth isn't dependent on their approval, and your peace doesn't hinge on their presence. The further you move from their chaos, the closer you come to your calling. And when He restores, He does it publicly. The same people who saw you break will one day witness your breakthrough. The same family that mocked your silence will see the strength that silence built. God will bless you in ways that can't be ignored, not to humiliate them, but to reveal His glory through your life. You'll carry a light that can't be dimmed by their darkness, a quiet confidence that says, "I survived what was meant to destroy me, and I came out whole." Redemption also changes your heart toward those who hurt you. Once you see how God used their cruelty to strengthen your character, you stop seeking revenge and start thanking Him for the redirection. You realize that if they hadn't pushed you away, you might never have discovered who you truly are. Their rejection forced you to find God's acceptance. Their silence drove you into deeper prayer. Their betrayal opened your eyes to the difference between conditional love and divine love. What they destroyed became the very thing God used to define you. So when you think about what your family took from you, the peace, the joy, the sense of belonging, remember this: God is not just restoring it, He's transforming it. He's giving you peace that can't be disturbed, joy that doesn't depend on circumstances, and belonging that isn't tied to approval. You're not getting back what you lost. You're receiving what you were always meant to have: a healed heart anchored in divine strength. And when the process is complete, you'll see it clearly. What they destroyed was never greater than what God built in its place. The cruelty of others could not compete with the creativity of the Creator. Every act of harm became a chapter of redemption. Every scar became a symbol of survival. You walk with quiet power, knowing that you've been rebuilt by the same hands that created you, and that nothing and no one can destroy what God has redeemed. Restoration means rediscovering yourself. It's not about going back to who you were before the pain. It's about meeting the version of you that has been waiting to emerge from beneath it. Family wounds have a way of making you forget your reflection. You begin to see yourself through the eyes of those who misunderstood you. Their criticism becomes your inner voice. Their silence becomes your self-doubt. You start believing that something must be wrong with you for being too sensitive, too different, too hopeful. You mold yourself into what they can tolerate, but in doing so, you drift further from who you truly are. That's why divine restoration is not just healing, it's remembrance. It's God taking your hand and saying, "This is who I created you to be," before they try to redefine you. Pain makes you shrink to fit into places you were never meant to belong. Maybe you learned to keep quiet because your opinions weren't valued. Maybe you stopped dreaming because your family made you feel foolish for wanting more. Maybe you built walls because love in your house came with conditions. Over time, you forget what your own voice sounds like. You live in reaction to others instead of in response to your calling. But when God begins the work of restoration, He doesn't start with your circumstances. He starts with your identity. He gently dismantles the false image you built to survive and calls forth the self that was hidden under years of pain. Rediscovering yourself through God's restoration is like watching light return after a long night. Slowly, your heart begins to thaw. The numbness fades. You begin to laugh again, not because life is perfect, but because something sacred inside you is awakening. You realize that your softness was never weakness. It was a reflection of divine compassion. You remember that your sensitivity was not a flaw. It was evidence of your spiritual depth. You start recognizing that your desire for peace was not naivety. It was your soul's natural alignment with God's nature. As He restores you, God also corrects the lies you were taught. The ones that told you that love must be earned, that boundaries are selfish, that silence equals strength. He replaces them with truth. That love flows freely when it's real, that boundaries are acts of self-respect, and that silence should be chosen, not forced. You begin to realize that your worth was never diminished by their blindness. Their inability to value you never erased your value. It only revealed their limitations. The restoration process teaches you to separate who you are from how others treated you. This rediscovery often feels uncomfortable because you're stepping out of roles that no longer fit. You stop being the family peacemaker, the one who absorbs everyone else's chaos. You stop seeking validation from those who never learned how to give it. You start walking away from conversations that drain your spirit instead of defending your right to feel. That's when the real healing happens, when you stop trying to earn peace from people and start accepting it from God. There's a sacred moment in the restoration journey when you realize you don't hate them anymore. You're no longer carrying the weight of proving yourself. The pain that once defined you becomes a story you can hold without trembling. You start seeing your family with new eyes, not as monsters, but as broken people who passed down their pain because they never healed their own. That revelation doesn't excuse their behavior, but it frees you from needing closure they may never give. Forgiveness in this sense is not about letting them back in. It's about letting yourself out. Rediscovering yourself also means reclaiming your peace. You stop letting your mind replay old arguments and instead start focusing on what's ahead. You make peace with the fact that some relationships may never be what you hoped for, but that doesn't mean you're incomplete. God begins filling the empty spaces in your heart with His presence, an unwavering, unconditional love that teaches you what true belonging feels like. And the more you rest in that love, the more you start to remember who you've always been: kind, resilient, worthy, chosen. One day you'll look in the mirror and recognize yourself again, not the version that learned to survive, but the one that knows how to live. You'll see softness without fear, strength without hardness, and joy without guilt. You'll realize that the person you were becoming all along was hidden beneath the rubble of other people's expectations. God didn't just restore you, He revealed you. The one He designed before pain, before betrayal, before misunderstanding. That's the beauty of divine restoration. It brings you back home to yourself. It silences the voices that said you weren't enough and amplifies the whisper that says, "You were always mine." You begin to walk lighter because you're no longer carrying the burden of who you were told to be. You begin to speak boldly because your voice no longer trembles with fear. You begin to love again because you finally understand what love really is. Restoration, then, isn't just about healing a heart. It's about returning to your original design. The person who was confident yet humble, strong yet gentle, peaceful yet passionate. The one created in God's image before family pain distorted the reflection. And when you find that version of yourself again, you'll realize that what was lost was never destroyed. It was simply waiting for the right season to rise. Your healing becomes your legacy. When God restores your heart, the story doesn't end with you, it begins with you. The pain your family caused was meant to stop you, to make you repeat the same cycles of brokenness they lived in. But instead, it awakened something divine inside you. You became the turning point in your bloodline, the one who decided that the curse would end here. The bitterness, the silence, the generational hurt. It all meets its end in you, because God chose you not just to survive, but to transform what destroyed others into something sacred. When you heal, you rewrite the emotional inheritance of your family. Think about that. Every tear you cry in prayer, every moment you choose peace instead of revenge, every time you break down and still rise again, you are repairing something that has been cracked for generations. You are doing what many before you could not. While others hid from their pain, you faced it. While they blamed, you forgave. While they repeated patterns, you surrendered to God's process. That's legacy, not in what you leave behind in possessions, but in what you pass down in strength, wisdom, and grace. Your healing becomes a mirror through which others see what God can do. Those who once mocked your silence will one day wonder how you became so steady. The same family who watched you suffer will see your peace and not understand it. They'll see that you no longer carry resentment, and it will make them curious about the God who gave you that freedom. Without ever preaching a word, your life becomes a sermon, one that says, "This is what divine restoration looks like." Every healed heart sends ripples through generations. You might not see it immediately, But when you choose healing, you're planting seeds for your children, your nieces, your nephews, and everyone who will come after you. They will grow up in a different atmosphere because of your courage. They will learn that love doesn't have to hurt, that family doesn't have to mean fear, that kindness doesn't mean weakness. The peace you fought for in tears will become their normal. That's the power of redemption. It multiplies. And though the process of healing may feel lonely, remember, it's not punishment, it's preparation. God often isolates the one he intends to elevate. He sets you apart so he can teach you what wholeness truly means. Because how can you lead others into peace if you haven't walked through pain? How can you show compassion if you've never been broken? Your wounds become wisdom, and your wisdom becomes a roadmap for others still lost in the dark. You'll recognize familiar pain in their eyes, and instead of bitterness, you'll offer hope. That's how your story heals more than just yourself. It heals others too. Sometimes you'll wonder why it had to be you, why you had to be the one to carry the weight of family trauma, why you were chosen to feel everything so deeply. But that depth was not a burden. It was preparation for divine assignment. God needed someone sensitive enough to break the cycle, yet strong enough to endure it. He chose the one with a soft heart, because only soft hearts can love again after being shattered. Only compassionate souls can rebuild what cruelty destroyed. You were chosen to be the bridge between what was and what can be. And once God restores you, you start living differently. You no longer operate from fear or defense. You live from purpose. The same empathy that once made you a target now becomes your gift. You start building environments of peace, communities of love, friendships rooted in mutual respect. You attract people who carry light instead of chaos. Your spirit begins to inspire others to believe that restoration is real. You become living proof that pain can end in peace, that God can take a wounded heart and make it a source of healing for others. The beautiful thing about divine restoration is that it turns victims into vessels. You no longer carry your family's pain, you carry God's promise. You stop repeating their mistakes and start revealing His mercy. The patterns that destroyed generations before you are now powerless against the grace that covers you. And as you walk in that freedom, your life silently teaches others that healing is not weakness, it's warfare. You're breaking what bound your bloodline. You're undoing decades of emotional damage with your prayers, your peace, and your perseverance. One day, you'll look back and realize that everything you endured was not for nothing. Your tears watered the soil of transformation. Your pain became the foundation for someone else's healing. And the family that once hurt you will one day be touched by the love you carry, the love that comes from God alone. Because your restoration is not just personal, it's generational. You are the proof that divine redemption doesn't just heal one heart. It redeems an entire story. You're the one who turned pain into purpose, and your healing will echo far beyond your lifetime. In the end, what family pain meant to destroy became the soil from which your purpose was born. Every tear you cried, every moment you questioned your worth, every season you walked alone, it all led you here, to this sacred place of restoration. God did not forget you. He was rebuilding you. He took the betrayal and turned it into wisdom. He took the silence and turned it into strength. He took what they shattered and made it shine. Now, you stand not as a victim of your past, but as evidence of divine healing. The pain that once weakened you has become your testimony. The wounds that once defined you have become windows through which others will see God's mercy. You are living proof that what was broken can be made whole again, not by human hands, but by a love that never fails. So, walk forward without fear. You are not who they made you to believe you were. You are who God says you are. Chosen, restored, and renewed. The years of pain did not take your destiny, they refined it. The heart they tried to destroy has become the heart through which God now moves. Let them see His glory in your peace, His justice in your joy, and His power in your survival. Because what God restores, no one can break again.